Hello guys, and we are doing our Couch Beer Week. It's our donut and beer tasting with Akasha Brewing. We've got I'm Ben, and below me is George from Akasha. To my right is Matt from Akasha, and then below him is Larry, who's our sales rep. I'll let you guys introduce the brewery, and then we'll start getting things rolling. Yeah. Larry, do you want to go first? Cool. And then Matt, what's your role at Akasha? I'm just going to stop you there, Matt. Technical difficulties. People can only hear me. So, audio. See if I can get this. Sorry guys. I might just turn my headphones off and see if that works. Does one of the other guys want to just quickly talk?
Sure. I'm George. I'm our lead brewer at Akasha. Been there for about.
Does one of the other guys want to just quickly talk? Sorry. There we go.
Do you want to keep going, Matt, with your intro?
Cool. I guess yeah. So I guess I'll start again with the technical difficulties. But I guess I'm Matt. I'm our national sales manager for Akasha. Currently, with the current situation, I'm also delivering our beer all around town in Sydney with a few of the other guys. Just a little bit about the brewery. I guess, as I was saying, we've now been going for 5 years, which is super exciting moment for us. We celebrated our 5th birthday last year, and hopefully you guys got to try some of our Wooden Leg Triple IPA. It'll be one of our favourite beers that we release, and it really says, who we are as a brewery to the T. We're all about big hoppy beers. As George, our lead brewer, will be talking about our offering for tonight. We love our IPAs, and we love doing different things with them. And yeah, that's us with Akasha.
Cool.
I'm Larry. I'm our Victorian sales guy, so I look after all of our customers down here. I'm the face of the brewery, I guess, down south, and a regular at Grape and Grape. I love the guys there, and I know them well. So I thought who better to do this with than these guys tonight.
Cool. go for it. I'm George. I'm our lead brewer, as Matt said. Also a part-time delivery driver at the moment. Work super hard with all our brew team to get you guys all the best hoppy beers that we can. That's what we're about, and I'm making them.
Awesome. Well, I think we've got a few people in now, so let's get our beers out and let's start tasting this awesome beer you guys made. So I've got mine here, and George, you want to talk a little bit about the beer?
So, strawberry sour New England IPA, something a bit wacky and out there. This was originally for an event up in Brisbane with a donut matching, and so that's why we continued it here. It is kind of out of our wheelhouse from what we would normally do, but we always love to experiment and try new things. When you see a name like that, there's so much going on. Strawberry sour New England IPA. So when we approach something like this and trying to brew it, it's always about balance, because there's so many different flavors, different experiences and textures and stuff that you get from this, that it's all about trying to make sure it all works together. That's why when we brew something like this, we don't really want anything to overpower, and so it's a fine line to balance that acidity and tartness that you get from the sour. It's a kettle sour beer, to balance it with all the hops that you put in, and then the mouthfeel and everything that you're going for. And so what we did with this one is brewed it in a similar way to a lot of our hazy beers that we normally do. We used Citra hops throughout the hot side to develop that hop flavour throughout. Then when it came time to dry hop, which obviously you need to do for a New England IPA, we actually switched up and used cryo Citra hops. That was partly because, or mainly because, we didn't really want those kind of grassy and piney flavours that you'd normally get coming through with a regular dry hop addition. So we wanted the cryo hops that don't have as much in those pellets, and so it wouldn't kind of take away from the strawberry flavour that you also get, and you would just be left with the citrus kind of zestiness that you get from the Citra cryo hops. And we added nearly 40 kilos of strawberries. Again, it's not something that you wanted to dominate the beer or make it feel like you're drinking strawberry milk. So for us, it was more something that would complement each of the other characteristics of the beer. And so I get it a lot on the nose, this beer, and it is a couple of months old by now, I think, but I still get it there. But yeah, I think it ties in really nicely with that citrus flavour that we've got throughout the hops, and then bringing it all together with a nice full-bodied through oats and wheat that we used in the mash as well.
George, just for anyone at home who might not be familiar, can you sort of explain what is the difference between cryo and regular hop pellets?
Yeah, so cryo hops are cryogenically frozen, so they get the actual hop flour, they freeze it, and then they're actually able to separate the glands and extract just the lupulin gland, which is the powder that gives you all that delicious flavour. So normally when they pelletize them, they crush it all up, and a lot of the vegetal matter that is part of the hop flour gets compacted into those pellets as well. And so normally it's kind of what you'd want in a nice IPA, and it really adds something, a different depth of flavour to it. But for something like this, we didn't quite want to have those flavours coming in as much. They're also quite concentrated, and so you don't need to use quite as much of them. They're quite expensive as well, so that's why they're not used all the time.
We're seeing a lot more use of cryo hops now recently, aren't we, with a lot of beers sort of veering away from bitterness and trying to just get those sort of big fruity elements without that greenness to it?
Yeah, definitely. And that hazy style, they work really well. But again, it's all about the exact kind of flavour profile you're going for. As I said, sometimes you really want that, others you don't. This, with so much going on, it was one factor we kind of wanted to remove from the beer, and just let that just notes of the Citra hop come through.
And George, you said you put 40 kilos of strawberries in it. Do you want to just let everybody know how small a batch size this was and say how much?
Oh yeah, so there's for context, it's a 300 litre, probably about 280 litre brew. So on our little pilot system that we have at the brewery for us to experiment, or if we have pubs and other customers that want to bring their staff in, they get to see the process and brew a beer with us. This one was just an experimental one that we wanted to try, so very limited how much we actually made in the end. So it works out to be like over 10%, 15% of the weight was that strawberries added.
And did you use fresh strawberries or strawberry puree or?
Yeah, so we used aseptic strawberry puree.
Yeah.
We found it's the best way to kind of maximise the extraction of flavour, and just logistically it's a lot easier to work with in the brewery.
Yeah, I feel like as well, it doesn't taste like that false strawberry that you get from a lot of strawberry beers, whereas you get, it's a bit more subtle, but like the flavour, but it's more, you can tell it's actual fruit it's come from rather than an extract or.
Yeah, and I think that's something you'll always get, is it will be that little bit more subtle because it isn't that concentrate or extract that some people can like dose kegs with or anything like that. So yeah, for me personally with this beer, it has subdued a little bit, but on the nose I really get it, and I think it works really well with the tartness of the base beer.
That's what I was going to say as well. I think the fact that we, it's real strawberries used in there, not some kind of concentrate or whatever, it lends that kind of tartness to it that works well with this style of beer, and it does dry it out a little bit, so it's not kind of that cloyingly sweet fruity beer that you do get sometimes.
All right, now let's get to the other half of this. So the donut. So the boys, Matt and George, have come. They're in Sydney, so unfortunately they couldn't join us with the Todco donut, but they have got themselves some alternatives. But Larry, do you want to talk to us about the Todco donut?
Yeah, sure. So I grabbed these from these guys, the Donut Co. I'm fortunate enough to live just around the corner from them, but I think people who are donut fans around Melbourne might know them. I think they're pretty well known for their stuff. I found this at their store. So what we've got is a strawberry cheesecake donut with a biscuit crumb. So talking to the guys at the donut shop about it, it's what they've done with this is it's actually a yeast raised donut rather than a cake donut. So it's kind of got this airy, very light bready texture to it. It does taste a bit obviously yeasty and bready, which is one reason I thought it would go well with the beer, as opposed to cake donuts, which are quite dense, got that crummy, very sweet kind of thing going on. So this is a bit less sweet, which I think works better with the beer and with beer pairing in general. And then the cheesecake filling, again, a bit of tartness there to kind of go well with the beer. I always feel like matching, say, donuts and desserts with beer, I personally don't want either of them to be too sweet, because if one is too sweet, it overpowers and it kind of takes away from the other. So both of these being a bit sweet but not over the top, I think is what makes it hopefully make it work well.
All right, I cut mine in half, so here's the cheesecake filling. So I am pretty keen to get munching, so here it goes. Always take a sip first.
Very good. It's also worth noting, I think, that we didn't actually have any of this beer left at the brewery, and so you guys kindly canned some up for us and express posted it up to Sydney.
It is pretty funny to have to send up our own beer from Melbourne back to the brewery in Sydney when we've got none stock. But yeah, that is because, as George was saying, it was a tiny batch and there was just none left anywhere. So
Yeah, we're pretty stoked to be able to showcase this type of beer as well. Like to have something that's exclusive to us in Victoria. I think that's pretty awesome as well.
This is a keg that obviously I got before all the COVID stuff hit, and it was going to be a real shame to not be able to use it when venues closed down. So this ended up being a really great way to do it, because I wanted to get this beer out to the world. I wanted to try it myself as well, because I had before it got tapped at Grape and Grain. So yeah, really good use of it. Good way to make it a bit of a fun thing, I think.
Tim seems to love the donut, so that's a good thing, and everybody else is saying it's a great pairing. So well done, Larry, on picking the pairing.
Oh well, look, I didn't do anything. It was all the beer here and the bakery guys. I just went and picked it. That's it. But I do think it worked really well. I think that cheesecake filling especially kind of goes very well with the kind of tartness of the beer, and then just that kind of subtle strawberry of the beer. Like George said, it has mellowed a bit since when it was originally brewed, but I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
Just top my glass up a bit. It's I think that cheesecake really complements the and the strawberry icing. Again, it's not the real strawberry flavor, but that I think it accentuates the strawberry out of the beer, and the tartness just cuts through the sweetness really well. So yeah,
I can see Lawrence just said that the acid in the beer cut through the sweetness of donut, and that's kind of what I was going for exactly, was just to have those two balance each other out. I think beer and food pairings are a bit underappreciated. I think they go really well together in a lot of ways, and you can pair all kinds of beers with all kinds of foods. I think it's kind of like almost the domain of wine still, and it has been for a long time. And I think beer can be just as good, if not better. And yeah, this is a good way to get people introduced, I think. George, have you done much sort of beer and food pairing stuff before?
Yeah, been to a lot of kind of beer match dinners. Not so much on the sweeter side, but it does show how versatile beer is to be able to have it with something like that. And because we're lucky in the variety of styles that we can get in beers, whether it's a crisp, easy drinking Pilsner through to heavy Imperial Stout, or something really hoppy in the middle. There's definitely a lot of combinations that really complement each other really, really nicely, and it's nice to see a lot of restaurants and pubs and stuff starting to respect that as well, suggesting a beer pairing with a certain dish, or even hosting their own beer dinners.
Yeah, for sure. Matt, is there any customers that you've got in Sydney that do beer and food well?
As George said, we've got a few pubs and things like that, and one thing that we've started to see them do a lot over the last few years is that suggestion. They're actually putting it on their menu with something that they'll have. I can think of a particular pub in the Rocks that I know where on their menu, literally it'll be there's a pepper kangaroo pizza or something like that, and it goes really well with like freshwater pale ale, and it's written on the menu like that. And I think that kind of stuff is important. I know you were saying before how it is when people think of food matching with an alcoholic product, they always do think of wine. And I think that wine, all the calories that are in it, they can actually sometimes take away from the food. Where I think that with beer, it's more of an uplifting presence, and it really helps to accentuate. This beer with the donuts is a really good example. As was mentioned before, the acidity from this beer cuts through the sweetness, and just makes it a really enjoyable experience. I think that you see all kinds of food bloggers and things like that who are now really getting into the beer side of things, which I think is really cool.
Like one thing one combination I often go for is a good big hoppy beer with something spicy like a curry, some Indian or some kind of spicy Asian curries. I think that's always a good combination. Then you can do stuff like fried food like fish and chips with just a nice clean lager to cut through that kind of fattiness, and it goes well with that crunchy batter. It's like Tim O is asking, he's got some wooden leg, what food should I go for? I guess I would say something spicy.
Something with a lot of flavour,
Yeah.
big flavours you want for something like
I
that.
really like, something super hoppy. Always really, it helps to have something really spicy. I think that's exactly as you said, Larry, and in his kind of Southeast Asian dish with a lot of spice. It's always super tasty.
I was just going to say, with the 10.5% beer, you want to make sure that you do actually have some food with it.
It's a good night beer, that one.
I have been caught unaware by wooden leg a couple of times, and had one, and then maybe a second one, and then forgotten to have dinner, and then next thing I know, it's morning, and I don't know what happened.
Every beer goes well with the kebab.
All right.
All right. Now we've got the donut and beer part out the way. We can move on to a bit of questions and answers. And I think the first thing that would be a great starting point is a lot of people know Akasha as a brand, but not many people know actually how much of an impact you guys will do behind the scenes with, say, your lab, and how you can test things on site, and all your quality control measures. George?
Yeah,
Take that, George.
sure. Okay. Yeah, so our founder, Dave Padden, I'm sure a lot of people out there know him. Had another brew before, but has been in the industry a long time, and is very acutely aware of what's kind of critically important to a brewery's success. And yeah, good beer and good recipes are great, but to be able to consistently do that and make sure that your beer is the same, whether you're having it out of the tank at the brewery or when someone gets it in a different state. The biggest thing for that is quality and quality control, quality assurance. And so from day one, Akasha's had a pretty well-equipped lab. It's grown quite a bit now. One of our brewers on the team has a microbiology background, and everything that we do is to reach the level of quality that we think is acceptable. And if any stage something doesn't meet those standards, we instantly address them. And so what that boils down to on a day-to-day kind of what we actually do is a number of obviously checking the fermentation, charting it, how every beer is performing, but we're also doing a number of checks throughout to monitor any kind of variances or if there's any kind of bacterial growth.
Oh, I think we may have
Lost
lost
George there for a second.
I think it's in terms of like the general beer market as well. If you can definitely see with a lot of small breweries that consistency isn't quite there. And with you guys, I know I can always pick up, say, a Hopsmith IPA, and it'll taste exactly the same as when I had it last time. As long as we keep it fresh and all of the stores keep it fresh and bars keep it fresh, then we know that product's always going to be the same, and a big part of that will be from your guys' lab. And he's really gone.
Yeah. I guess I'll pick up from what George was saying just a little bit, and I probably won't articulate it quite as well as he will, and I'm sure he can correct us when he comes back on. But it really, as it's been such an integral part for the entire 5 years, it started as quite a small desk, and it's grown to its own office. But even though it seems like one of the small rooms in the brewery, it's got some of the most expensive equipment in there for us to consistently be able to test it. We talk about the Hopsmith, and it's something that we do really pride ourselves on, is that we want customers to have that experience. We want customers to, when they pick up one of our beers, it's just as good as the last time they had it, and there isn't that sort of variance in it. And one thing that we do is we keep a constant can library of all of our beers, and so we'll test it we'll keep beers warm, and we've got a space in our cool room for them, so that we can test them at various points over a 6-month period of time, so that we know exactly how our beers are holding up over that period of time, so that the customers are getting.
I guess having that can library allows us to really stand by that 9-month best before, because we have the brewers test that beer on a regular basis in the library.
Yeah, awesome. I think as well, like it's becoming a more integral part of the beer industry. Is going through these checks and going through but if you guys can do it on a wider scale or a better level, then I think it's only helpful for the rest of the industry as well, because your guys will be consistent and everyone will be gunning for that. Paul Fountain.
Yeah, 100%. I guess the better that, the more that breweries across the board try and do this and get better at it, the more it just improves the quality of beer in the country in general, which I think, is only a good thing.
Paul's asking, how many craft breweries do you think would have that sort of lab set up? And I think it's kind of hard to tell, being outside of the not going into each individual brewery and seeing what their processes are. But I think most breweries that I know of do some sort of testing in-house, but maybe not to the extent that you guys do.
I think there's definitely been and I think that you can really see it. I mean, the quality, as you talk to anybody who, just drinks craft beer and has been over the last, 5 to 10 years, the quality of beer that's coming out of breweries these days is unmatched with what it was, even just a couple of years ago. And I think it is a lot to do with that. It's the breweries are testing more. It's, really being mindful of that consistency message. And I think that even from this, and we think that even the smallest breweries should be able to test at least at some point. You can do simple things like even diacetyl testing and things like that will make a big difference in your beer, and that's something that we always check. It's we will make sure that we've got George back, I think.
Hey, he's back.
Got video. I think audio is still coming.
But yeah, as you were saying, the testing is such an important thing, and we firmly stand by it. And there are a lot of breweries that do a lot of great testing. I think it's important to keep up with.
George, we're just still talking about quality, and one of the viewers asked how many craft breweries would have a similar kind of lab set up to us. Would you have any idea how common it is? Or uncommon?
Firstly, I just want to apologise about that. My computer just crashed suddenly. Mad scramble. I'm on a phone now, unfortunately. So I think every brewery now, if they're existing now, they've got some level of quality control. I think for us, having a fully equipped, fully functional lab is probably not something that a lot of breweries just starting out can afford, but there's a lot of simple tests that we can do, that every brewery can do, that are pretty vital to a brewery's success. But now that we've been going for about 5 years, we've got a lot that we can do at our disposal to ensure that we're always making the highest quality product we can. So I'd say that every brewery would have some level of quality control, whether it's a lab or not, maybe not necessarily, but just lots of simple everyday tests to make sure that everyone out there gets the exact same beer and it always tastes the best it can.
And Matt mentioned diacetyl testing. What is diacetyl for anyone who's watching who's not really too sure?
So diacetyl is something that naturally occurs in the fermentation process of every beer. It happens when the primary fermentation of a beer is completed. It's just something that naturally is produced. The yeast at the end of it then goes back through and cleans up and gets rid of it. But you'll notice if you kind of rush a beer, and lots of homebrewers out there probably have experienced this. I'm sure, I know I did the first time I tried to brew double IPA, and you're just so eager to get it bottled and you just rush through it. You just need to give it a little extra time because chill it down. Diacetyl is always going to be in the beer, and it's a really butterscotchy kind of flavour. I'm sure you've probably tried beers before unknowingly that it has it in there, but it is that like almost like buttery popcorn type flavour. But it's not anything that's been done wrong in the brewing process. It just hasn't been given enough time to finish its fermentation.
Yeah, I've definitely had some hoppy beers and some IPAs that I can taste a lot of butterscotch in. It's just, yeah, it's not what you want. It kind of ruins the beer a little bit.
Kind of one of those rites of passage of a home brewer to
yeah.
rush a beer
and it seems most
get it stuck in there. But
most
again,
commercial should do as well.
It is one of yeah, one of the more easy things to be able to test for and check, and so that's something we obviously do on every one of our beers.
Cool.
So
Matt,
for
we've
you
got,
guys,
Bruce, sorry.
no, you go, Larry.
Do you want me to field that question?
Yep.
Yep.
No, Bruce, go for it. I mean, Matt, go for it. So Bruce is asking, have we tried doing wild ales, or is that just too risky for biggish breweries?
So, and things like that. With the way that with our brewing process and the way that it is, it's at all points, which is that has been high on our radar. But not necessarily a risk. There's definitely big breweries over in Europe and things like that. Quite look the style of beers that we enjoy brewing and are part of our brands.
I think a few of the guys at the brewery up there in Sydney as well do enjoy them.
Yeah, definitely. It is one of my favourite styles with wild ale, but yeah, it's not something where we really have the equipment to do, or it is a completely different focus than what we love the most. Brewing big, hoppy, nice, clean, easy drinking beers. It's probably the best for us, but we definitely do enjoy drinking them.
Awesome. Well, I hear you guys do have a new canning line as well.
Yeah, look. So I guess we did get the canning line, and we got the canning line all set up at the start of the year. That's been something we've been working really hard on. Eight months or so. We've really seen. We first put our beers into cans. I think Hopsmith just had its 3-year anniversary in cans, just around Anzac Day. And originally we were going through, we were using East Coast canning to come through, who really helps a lot of small breweries and a lot of big breweries around Australia get their beers into cans. Obviously, over the last 3 years, we've seen such a huge shift, from 90%, bottle shops to 90% bottles, and now you look at a fridge and it's hard to find a bottle in there, especially with the hoppy beers. So we commissioned the canning line. I'm pretty sure late January, early February, which is super exciting for us, and it's something that we really wanted to get in house for a good period of time. It just allows us that flexibility, allows us to do smaller runs of things on the cans. It allows us to know when we're about to run out of cans, that if we've got beer in the tank, we can do it from there. Pre this whole situation, it allowed us to split kegs and can batches as much as we could do as well, which always means fresher beer on taps and in cans for people as well, because we wouldn't have to commit to doing such large volumes of cans all at one stage. It's really been, it's been something that we're super excited about, and obviously now the ability to get beer into cans and not into kegs has been a really good shifter for us. If we want to know more about the canning line, I think George, who has been spending a lot of time with that machine over the last 3 months, it's probably
of my existence, but the reason that we all still have a job, I think we were very fortunate to get it. It allowed us to can as much as we wanted. The biggest upside being the flexibility that we're now allowed. Obviously, with East Coast Canning, who we used before, did great work for us, but obviously this time they're in huge demand, and so for us to be able to have the flexibility to can whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted, with the changing needs of our sales team, who are pretty demanding people, it has meant that we've been able to stay afloat and keep everyone on board working hard. Those more nerdy people out there that want to know the ins and outs, it's cask 10 head filler and got 2 seamers, which means we can pump out about 70 cans a minute when we've got it flying. So it really hums along when it wants to, but yeah, it has been a real lifesaver for us.
And even going back to what we were talking about just before with quality, has this made an impact on improving the quality of the beers as well?
To an extent, it has allowed us a lot more control over everything. But I mean, the guys at East Coast are experts in what they do, and so we're brewers by trade or sales guys by trade. So it's taken us a bit of a learning curve to try and get up to that level. It's a whole new thing to learn. Dave, our founder, actually flew over to Canada and the US to go to their casks headquarters where they're from in Canada, and then visited a bunch of breweries throughout the US that were using it to see how they had it running smoothly. And yeah, there's been a lot of fine tuning, and it's still ongoing. We've still got things to do. Monday morning I'll be working on it to try and make sure that it is the best we can get it running. But like everything, as long as we monitor as close as we do, we can ensure that the cans that go out in Five Dock next to the brewery are the same ones that you're getting down in Melbourne and any other places throughout the country that might be getting our beer.
And I remember Dave even saying that there's a few breweries around the world using the same line as us that are getting some of the lowest dissolved oxygen in their beers in the world. So I guess that's very encouraging for us as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it's not a counter pressure filled machine, but it's still, when you've got it dialed in, can get really, really great results. We actually bought it from our good friends up at Newstead Brewing in Queensland. They only had it, I think, a year or two. Didn't quite meet their needs, but they've been super helpful, and every time I've got an issue, I've got someone up there that I can call straight away or email and ask for their advice, and so we're lucky in that regard. I'm not sure there's another machine in Australia, but could be wrong.
Well, I'm not sure if there's another machine in Australia. I guess just for people to know, this is the exact same canning line that the guys governors do. This is the exact same canning line that they have. One of the really cool things that Dave got to do when he went to Canada and the US was actually go to get fresh heady topper off the canning line, and as he said, if they're producing some of the best beers in the world, best hoppy beers in the world are using this canning line, it's the perfect line for us.
Yeah, definitely a good example to lead from.
You might be able to answer this, Larry. Just with we've seen a shift in our market of a lot more breweries, especially smaller, newer breweries, moving into cans rather than focusing on bottles. What do you think that as an industry? Do you think it's the right way to go? Do you think it's going to be more prevalent? I know from our point of view, we would prefer cans over bottles for most breweries. But for you, do you think that it's been a really good step for you guys to go to cans rather than being in bottles, or how?
Yeah, 100%. Like when I started with us, we were already in cans, but I know we started out in bottles early days, and I have seen some breweries go from bottles to cans. over the past year and a half. And I can already see even from the outside that it has made a positive impact for them. And I think it's a good thing because it is coming back to that quality of the beer. It is improving the quality of the beer, having it in cans. It's got a longer shelf life. There's no risk of light strike, which is a big one in bottles, that kind of thing. It's easier for retailers to store. It's pretty much all positives. So as if that's the case, then obviously I'm all for it. I think anything that improves quality of beer across the board's only a good thing.
Yeah, awesome. And the next point that we had written down was you guys are heading into WA and South Australia soon, so that's exciting news for you guys and becoming more of a national distributor. Matt, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's something we're really excited about moving towards, and we will be sending from next month. All going to plan. We'll be sending some beer over to South Australia, which we've done a little bit in the past, but now we'll be doing it all direct to customer. Larry's been reaching out to a lot of the guys over there, and there's a lot of really excited people about getting some of our cans there, and to WA, which haven't really seen our beers before. It's one of those things where we do get asked quite constantly from the west of the country where they can pick up our beers, and so we're really excited about sending some beers over there. It's such a great scene that they have in Perth and around southern Western Australia. Some great breweries over there, and it's part of Australia that doesn't have the presence of a major brewer, so they're really big supporters of independent beer, and we're really excited about getting over there.
Awesome. One of the other things we had written down was hop contracts. I believe you guys have been dealing with a lot of American hop varieties and getting some awesome hop quantities. George?
Yeah, so you're right. We almost exclusively use American hop varieties. It's just what we love and what works for us. Last year we signed a new contract directly with Yakima Chief in Washington State over there in the US. Now that we have that kind of direct relationship, we were able to get more of the hops that we wanted. We have a better relationship in terms of being able to get newer hops or hops that are in high demand. We have pretty good relations now, and as soon as the harvest is ready, we're able to get those really fresh hops. And so anyone that got the first batch of our Corbin D double IPA this year were the direct recipients of that. Some other benefits, while it didn't pan out at the end of last year, our founder Dave was invited over to go over the hop harvest there. Timings didn't allow him to, unfortunately, but moving forward that would be really good for us to be able to go and be a part of that hop selection process. For anyone that isn't aware, it's pretty similar in hop growing to going to a vineyard, and the same grapes grown in one paddock in another could have completely different characteristics, and there is a similar phenomenon that goes on with hops as well. And so if you're able to go over and select exactly the crop that you want from this particular field that might be strong in mango characteristics or something like that, you can tailor what hops you pick to the beers that you know you're going to be making. So having that direct relationship for us now is a big game changer moving forward.
Yeah, I think for some people talking about hop contracts might seem like it's a bit, anything with a contract obviously doesn't seem very interesting, but I guess the result is dealing directly with the farms. We now get access to just higher grade hops. All their hops get graded after harvest, and when they're coming to a distributor, they're at one class, but now getting them directly from farms, it's much higher. And even for me, with that first batch of Corbin this year, I opened those cans and I could smell them. They were amazing. And then even with Hopsmith, which is a beer that I drink probably every other day basically, when I opened my first can of Hopsmith earlier this year from that first batch with the new hops, I could smell those hops from a mile away out of the can. It was amazing. It makes a big difference.
I think Hopsmith is definitely one of the beers that it's had the most profound effect on. I mean, it was a beer, it was always my favourite beer that we did, but I mean, as Larry said, the hops, as they jump out of the glass more, there's more of those fruity characteristics that come through quite nicely. It's a beer that I go to every day as much as possible, and it means that George has to can more of it, which is always a favourite of mine.
So Tim just asked what seasonal limited release beers do you guys have coming out soon, and I'll put a point on that as well. Does your hop contracts mean that you'll be getting more experimental hop varieties coming over, so you can brew some new crazy limited release beers?
I think while we will have some access to some of their research arms and testing out new experimental hops, at the moment, especially given the current climate, we're kind of not in that headspace, but definitely not ruling it out moving forward. For us, it would be more style varieties, and we'll introduce some new hops into our regime. I think Sabro was the most recent one that we did that we were all super stoked with. But yeah, for the time being, once we are able to get our tasting room back up and running, fully operational as normal, they had their first day of trading today actually, but once it's fully operational, we'll be able to fire up our pilot system a bit more effectively, where we can do the kind of 2 or 3 kegs at a time. But yeah, at the moment, probably holding off for now.
Just on the seasonals and limiteds and even the new hops, that Sabra that just came out, I was always a bit iffy on Sabra as a hop. It's still very new, and for me, I wasn't quite sure where it fitted in some beers, and then we used it in our Red IPA collab with Newstead, and in that it was kind of a bit of a background. That coconut came from the background, and I think that worked really well with the darker malts. And then with our single hop IPA Sabra we just did, I've had a couple of cans of that, and I think every time I drink it, like, I get a different element of that hop that comes out. At first it was that big coconut, then it's that really, really ripe pineapple, and some mango, and then it's just sort of it comes in at different stages that I'm really enjoying that hop and that beer especially. So I think getting access to down the track potentially some new hop varieties will always be a bit of fun.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of the reasons why we love doing the single hop IPAs. As you guys probably have seen our Mosaic, we've done a Mosaic hop IPA, we've done Simcoe, we've done a whole variety of ones, and doing those single hop varieties, we try and keep the malt base really similar to all of the beers, and so that as George and Larry said, you can actually pick out the characteristics of the hop varietals that you like in them, and some hops it works better with than others. We did in the past use some German hop varietals, Huel Melon. Hello, Gab Porto, if you're watching. That didn't work quite as well. I think that some hop varietals is a really good way of showcasing things to see how we can use it in different beers going forward as well.
As far as beers we've got coming out, down here in Victoria, we've got our Queen of the Damned Red IPA coming in a couple of weeks, which we did, I think, for the first time in a big release last year. And, I personally love Red IPAs. I love that beer, and it got a really good reception. So I'm very keen to see it get into everyone's hands again soon. I think it's already out in Sydney. Is that right?
Yeah, it just had its first week out this week. It's already sold out at it was sold out on Friday. Hoping to get a few more cans of that actually canned this week, pending labels. But we've got the Red IPA is definitely one of my favourite beers that we do, which was originally a collaboration with the Royal Albert Hotel in Sydney. A bit of fun.
Yeah, and then so we're also doing later this month. We did a collaboration brew with Hopheads out west in Melbourne a little while ago, and that beer is now being redone, and it's going to be called The Shape of Hops to Come. So that's going to be another hazy IPA we'll have towards the end of this month. It's going to be a really, really small run, very limited, but we're very excited for that because that was a beer that we loved when we first did it late last year. I think that was probably our first time using Azaka as well. George, is that right?
Yes. First time while I was working there, yeah.
First time.
Cool. We are starting to run out a little bit of time, but we've got a couple of questions left. So one of my favourite questions to ask people is, what is your epiphany beer? So the beer that made the most impact on your beer drinking style, or the beers that you go for now. And that could be from the first craft beer you ever tried, or through to just a beer that influenced your favourite style. And I'll go first. And my beer epiphany was Emerson's Pilsner was the first ever craft beer that I tried. And I was working in hospitality, and I tried it because it was the most expensive beer we had on tap. And I had it as my knockoff, and then I kept having it as my knockoff, and that actually led me into drinking and searching out more different styles of beer, because I was like, actually there is more flavour to beer rather than just, because this was back in New Zealand, so it was rather than just drinking Spates or Heineken or Corona at the time. So who wants to go next?
I'll take this. I guess for me, it was really hard for me to narrow it down to one. So I've probably got a couple different ones that cover different areas. But I think that one of the very first good indie beers that I had was Vale Ale by Vale Brewing in SA. And this was a beer that I had probably in my early 20s while I was working in a bottle shop, and it was literally on clearance for like a couple of bucks a bottle because it was past its best before date. So it was old, it was no good, well it should have been no good, and I had it, and even then, everyone knows, when a beer gets that old, how not great they get. It was still so much more flavoursome and so much better than some of the beers that I was drinking beforehand, like your macro lagers and that kind of thing. And that kind of really opened my eyes up to like, oh wow, this you can have so much more to a beer than what I'm getting from what I've been drinking. And then that led me down towards stuff like Hop Hog, which was a really sort of good gateway kind of entry beer into these bigger ones. And I guess to keep it short-ish, I think that Vale Brewing was my first one.
Funny you mentioned that, Larry. Well, I thought about it as well, and back in 2011, 2012, I was fresh out of high school and working at a pub in the Rocks here in Sydney, and they focus exclusively on Australian craft beer. And so I got my first taste of things like Little Creatures was definitely there. The pale ale kind of got me into it, but it was Vale IPA was the game changer beer for me. When I finally had my first IPA, it just blew me away, and it was so revered by staff at the time at the pub that as soon as we did anything wrong or got in trouble, that would be the first thing to go from staffies. You weren't allowed to have a schooner of that, but it was an eye-opener for me for that step up from a pale like Little Creatures Pale, which was a great beer, to like that IPA level was what kind of really blew my mind.
Cool. And Matt?
So I guess for me, I think I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to say that there's probably two beers for me. One of the first ones was Cooper's Dark Ale. I was managing a pub, and we sort of recently taken James Squire off tap, and I was allowed to have two Cooper's taps. So I was allowed to put Cooper's Pale Ale on, which I'd always drunk, and I was like, this is great. It was my first opportunity of in my early 20s, and I was like, I'll put this dark ale on tap, and if I can make it sell, then I've done a good job. And my goal every week was to make sure that it sold at least over a keg. And so any time that it wasn't, it was getting close, I was like, well, that's my start here. And from there, I like really got into enjoying it, and led me to a couple of beers from there. But probably my big one for me was actually Murray's Brewing Company. Their Angry Man Pale Ale. I used to love that beer. That was a beer that was my go-to. It was the first real hoppy beer that I had gotten into, and really when Sean was brewing there, who's since gone on to Mount Polcorn, brewing up in Newcastle. I was spending a lot of time up in Newcastle that period of time, and drinking Angry Man really led me to the love of hoppy beers. And I'll always have fond memories of that beer.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, I think we should probably wrap things up now. Big thank you to you guys for giving your time to us. And obviously this wouldn't have been the same without you guys. It would have been just me sitting and talking into a screen. Also a big thanks to the Oakley Donut Company for supplying the donuts, even though we did go and pay for them. And thanks for Larry for giving us the idea of the donut and beer pairing as well. Thanks for everyone for tuning in as well, and we'll probably do this again at another point, maybe with another brewery. Maybe we'll get the Akasha boys back another time. Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for Grape and Grape.
Oh.